Hey everybody, welcome back to CIS 39. Today we are going to be covering lesson number 11 on how to sculpt a mouth. If my computer overloads the website. So this is going to be pages number 62 through 70 in the textbook. Um, and like last time, I'm going to go ahead and start off by just doing a quick overview of the different anatomy and the different major steps from the reading. So there's not a whole lot of anatomy to memorize for the mouth. Really, there's only 6 or 7 different parts we got to focus on. The first is that the upper lip is made of 3 masses. You can see that here. There's mass 1, 2, and 3, and then the bottom lip is made up of 2 masses. But it's often very subtle. It's not like you can really see a large distinction. There's a small dent here, which indicates that those 2 are separate masses. And then you can see the bump here in the middle of the upper lip called your tubercle. So that's really the only fancy terminology that you got to remember today. Well, that and the nasolabial fold. And I guess that's worth mentioning now, is that the nasolabial fold is a wrinkle that can run all the way from the tip of your nose down to the corner of your mouth. And I have a picture here of lots of examples of it. So you can see that it can range quite dramatically from being almost invisible, like none at all. You can sort of see the suggestion of the nasolabial fold here. But as we get older, they get much, much deeper and much more prominent on our face. And you can see it runs all the way from the top of the nose down to the bottom. Now, even if you are younger, you can still get a pretty prominent nasolabial fold when you smile. So you can see over here, this woman's kind of smiling out of the corner of her mouth, and so the nasolabial fold is much more visible here compared to over here. And since the Amy model that we're using is smiling, we will sculpt in a bit of a nasolabial fold, but again, we don't want to make it deep to make it look like she's old. All right, so let's go back to the book. All right, not a whole lot of anatomy like I mentioned to memorize. One thing is that important to keep in mind is that this is true for most people. This isn't always true. But when you're looking at somebody from the side, from profile, the lips and the mouth form a downward angle. And what that means is that when we look at the model from the side, if we go way down to here and look in this picture, from here, the upper lip down to the bottom of your chin should form an angle like you see here. In other words, if the bottom lip protruded further than the upper lip, you can kind of imagine that. That'd be like an overbite. That would be not something that is impossible. You know, some people do have overbites, but it would be unusual. The other thing is the chin is, again, it's usually further back than the upper and lower lip. So you want to try to maintain that angle on the character as you're sculpting. All right, let's go back up here. I mentioned the upper lip is made of 3 masses. The lips and the mouth are round. So when you are sculpting, at some point you should rotate the model. I'm going to go ahead and move over to Mudbox to the finished version that I have here. So in other words, when you look from the bottom up, you'll notice that the lips are round. And same thing when you look from the top down. You want to make sure that the lips are round, matching the contour of the face. Okay. And then these are not as important. Teeth influence the shape of the lips. That's true, but we're not going to worry about sculpting that into it. And then the underlying fat and muscle dictate the shape. And mostly we're going to see that when we look at the bottom corners of the mouth. So you can see that there's a very subtle bulge that we have. It forms sort of a triangular shape here. And that's just some fat underneath your skin. And it kind of helps to form this little dent that we can see here underneath the chin. So it's kind of like the philtral column. When we did the philtral column, we didn't actually sculpt a dent into here. We sculpted the philtral columns on the outside. Oops, on the outside. We sculpt those first, and then that resulted in there being a dent here. So it's the same idea when you sculpt this dent in here, as you sculpt in these 2 masses off to the side, and then we could use the grab tool or the inverted bulge tool to push it in a little bit more if it needs to be that way. Okay. The book has you do this. Again, this is unnecessary. This is, I don't know, just to kind of keep you from being distracted by the parts of the model that aren't finished. But again, I'm not going to do that, and you guys don't need to do that either. Marking the location of the ellipse. Best way to do that is using an inverted bulge tool. And you're just going to simply draw in a line like you see here. And that's going to be our reference point when we go to sculpt in the masses for the upper and the lower lips. For the upper lip, he mentions using the wax or the bulge tool. I would recommend using the bulge tool as you sculpt in the upper mass. I'm also going to show you that using something called steady stroke. We used that way back when we did the bell pepper to create the ridges along the side of the bell pepper. Using steady stroke is going to allow you to get a nice shape to the lip. Because when you do the lip, you don't want to scribble as you create this mass. In other words, you don't want to kind of go in there with the brush and scribble to create it. You want to do it in one nice even stroke and just sort of one stroke at a time, slowly build up that mass. He mentions using fall off profile number 6. The default is fall off profile number 2. You can find those here. And I just use fall off profile 2 and it seems to work fine with me. You just may have to adjust the magnitude or the strength of the brush as you're sculpting. Let's see. Okay, he mentions for the lower lip that you can give her a mustache here using the freeze tool. So that way you don't accidentally undo any of the work that you did up here when you're sculpting in the mask for the lower lip. I find that if you're just careful when you sculpt, you don't really need to do this. But all right, so down here, this is the triangular mask that I showed you earlier on the model. And then he pushed in here to create this dent. And then also, he's working here on creating the nasolabial fold. It looks like he's trying to get your attention here, but actually what's happening is he's pushing in a little bit to create this little ridge for the nasolabial fold. I don't like to do it that way because I don't like to screw up the shape of the mouth, so I'll show you guys an alternative way to create that little ridge. It's very, very simple to do it. I mean, basically it's what he's doing right here. You're just going to freeze, use the grab tool, and pull back a little bit, the same way we created that little ridge for the nose on the nose sculpt. Okay, here he's adding the tubercle. He's just creating a small a small bump here in the middle of the lip. And then finally down here he's adding some texture to the lips by creating subtle little ridges here along the lips. All right, and that is an overview of how we're going to approach sculpting the mouth. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this layer off to get it back here. Okay, and to start off, let's go ahead and use the bulge tool. And like I mentioned, we want to make sure you have it inverted. Like I mentioned, I'm going to use steady stroke for the bulge tool here. So that way I can just get a nice smooth line when I go to sculpt in the crease for the mouth. I'm going to go ahead and use the concept art here. And then you may want to do a couple test strokes to just make sure that you're see, that's like way too wide for what we need to do. I want it to be very tiny because this is just going to be, there we go, a reference point for the mouth. So I'm going to use the concept art. And you're going to want to start right from the middle. Now, if the concept art doesn't match up, it's okay. Just the main thing is you don't want to have a separating line between the 2 points. All right, there we go. That's pretty much the only time you really need to use the concept art. All right, that turned out pretty good. All right, next we are going to use the bulge tool to create the mask for the upper lip. Obviously, we don't want that inverted. Sorry, my throat is scratchy today. Okay, you're going to need to be a little bit stronger. It's going to be too small. It looks like a pretty good size. Okay. So I'm just going to want to make sure I stay above the line. Take your time on this. Just going to make sure that that mask stays above the line that I just sculpted in. I'm going to go all the way out to the corner build up a nice mass for the upper lip. Okay, there we go. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and use the flatten tool. And the book doesn't mention doing this, but it's a nice way to get the shape for the corners of the mouth. And I'm just going to flatten out over here like so. Okay. And last but not least, I'm going to use the fill tool. There's the fill tool. And I'm going to fill in this little gap right here to round it off. Okay, and then last but not least, let's blend all this in. Be careful not to smooth too much because you'll lose all the detail that you just added for the upper lip. Okay, let's do more smoothing. Yeah, if you smooth too much, you'll end up getting rid of your filtral columns, so just got to be careful when you're smoothing across the lip. Okay, and that's pretty much it for the upper lip. Okay, now you'll notice that because of the way that I started right from dead center, you kind of get the tubercle for free. So he goes back and does it at the very end, but because of the way that I did it, you don't need to do that. But again, notice that I did that all as one brush stroke. You don't want to try to use the bulge tool and scribble to create that, otherwise you'll look too bumpy. Okay, let's do the lower lip next. Make sure I got a good size. And you're just going to go right along all the way out to the edge. Okay. Next, I'm going to use the flatten tool. Flatten out the corners of the mouth, the lip. And do a little smoothing while I'm there too. Okay, now she kind of has like fish lips. So what we're going to do is I'm going to flatten out a little bit more down here too. We're going to go ahead and smooth. We're going to go ahead and use the pinch tool, and that's going to help refine the overall borders. There we go. And then let's pinch right here along the middle as well. Okay. And now I'm going to come back into the middle and just give the inside a little bit more volume using the bulge tool. And let me turn it for this one. Let's leave steady stroke on. Okay, so next, we're going to want to make sure that we have that nice shape from the side of the upper lip protruding out more than the lower lip. So next I'm going to go ahead and freeze the top. Okay, make sure that we get all this in here. And I didn't say this at the start, but you should definitely make sure that you put all your stuff in a new layer. So in case you don't like how things are going, you can just throw that layer away and start over. Okay, and then from the side view, I'm going to pull that lip back using the grab tool set to a very, very large setting. So we're just going to make sure that the lower lip it's further back than the upper lip. We don't have to go too, you don't have to go too crazy with it. But so now she's starting to lose that fish lip look. Okay, next we are going to make sure that it is rounded. Right now it's a little flat. So we just want to make sure that the middle of the mouth is further out. The lips nice and rounded. So now we're starting to get there. We're starting to look like a mouth. Okay, is that round enough? Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to smooth out here where it was frozen. It looks like it got. So just using the smooth tool here. Okay. Okay, we're actually almost done. Next, we are going to sculpt in those little fatty pads down here. And she has a really blocky chin right now because of what I did not do near in the first lessons for the overall shape. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleaning up here to create her cheeks and her jaw. Let's go ahead and sculpt in using the wax tool and just drawing these triangular masses here. And it's okay to scribble on these because we're going to really do a lot of smoothing. Okay, and we're going to have to set that strength on that smooth tool nice and high. So just scribbling like crazy to get it to nicely blend in. There we go, starting to take shape. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and use the bulge tool and turn off, well, turn on invert and then turn off steady stroke. That's way too, I might end up using the grab tool instead here. That's okay. There we go. I got it. Okay, so we're just forming that little indentation underneath the chin, or underneath the lip. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and flatten these a little bit near the bottom and try to smooth those in a little bit more so they're not quite as jowly looking. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and I could probably flatten it a little bit more. It's still a little bit too big, but it's okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just keep going. All right, so next I'm going to go ahead and fix up her chin. So I'm just going to bring this up. And then you can see I got to move a lot of stuff over here. So I'm going to have to make this really, really big. Okay, and then pull this out a little bit. This is where the concept art would be helpful for us. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and blend this in a little bit more here using the smooth tool. Okay. let's check that we're rounded here. Still rounded. All right, so there we go. So we're just going to use build up those triangular shapes here, push in the middle here, and then push up here to give her chin. And then just work on the cheek and just kind of, again, go back and forth with your concept art to see if you're getting things to line up. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and create the nasolabial fold. So like I said, that's easy to do. You're just going to freeze. Right up here. Use the grab tool. And then just subtly bring that back. And remember, you don't want to go too far. The only reason that she has that nasolabial fold is because she's smiling. So it's going to be very, very subtle. I mean, I could have probably gone a little bit further back. You just got to be careful because you do it too much and it starts to look like a wrinkle. All right, so Amy is happy. Okay, and then last but not least, you would add the tubercle, but like I said, I pretty much have a tubercle, so I'm not going to do that. So next I'm going to go ahead and go in with the regular Sculpt tool, set to a very, very small setting. I could also just use the bulge tool, I suppose. And just give this a little, oh, got to invert it. Just give the lips a little texture. And there you go. That is how you sculpt a mouth. Now, of course, I could go in there and do some more cleanup and tweak things and go back and forth with my concept art and check that out and make it match up more. But I think you guys get the major parts of the anatomy that you need to sculpt in there to get it done. All right, so that is it for lesson number 11. As usual, if you guys need help on anything, don't hesitate to send me an email, and I will do what I can to help you out. All right, good luck, everybody.